It's 9 o'clock, team, and there's lots that we want to get through today. So I am going to start us off. Can I please welcome you all to our monthly Regional Connects webinar. I am in Brisbane today, so I'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara traditional owners. We acknowledge, as always, their leaders past and present, and remember them as our first innovators across Australia. And I doubly want to acknowledge leaders emerging, because I know a lot of us on the call today get to work with emerging leaders in our regions on a whole range of different projects, a lot of which we'll talk about today.
So if you want to then maybe send me a message.
I'm going to...
because I don't want to miss it.
Nikki, I'm going to get you to mute yourself, sister. We are very lucky today to have a full program. I just want to go back and remind people that this is being recorded, as are the other webinars that we've had over the last few months. And we've got one more to have this year. All good, Nikki. One more to have this year before we wrap up. And I'll let Heather speak about that at the end of today's session. But one of the things that that we do at the beginning of these is I ask people to pop in the chat what your postcode is. So we're building a map of all of the conversations that have been happening. So if I can ask everybody who's on the call today to pop in your postcode, so we can continue to build this wonderful map of where the conversations are going. As people will know, or maybe know, my name's Julia Spicer. I live at Gundawindi, and I represent the regions on the Innovation Advisory Council that sits under Queensland's Chief Entrepreneur and the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. And I acknowledge Wayne Gerard as our Chief Entrepreneur and the staff that are with us today and that do the work. And really how these webinars started was for a chance to make sure that regardless of where we live in Queensland, we have the opportunity to connect in with people who are doing impactful work, who are working on projects that are really moving the needle for us in the regions, and look at how we as SMEs, as entrepreneurs, as people working in this innovation ecosystem, have the opportunity to connect in and be part of what's going on. We can't always get to the big conferences or events or activities that might be happening in some of the bigger centres, but hopefully through these monthly catch-ups, we've got a chance to be tapped into what's going on and to be able to grow our networks. And that's really what today's about. We are very lucky to be partnering and working with our friends at Infrastructure Association Queensland today, and they've really pulled together a group of people who are going to be speaking with us. And I guess one of the reasons we were keen to work with IAQ on these webinars is, you know, when we talk about the future industries, when we talk about how we're reshaping and being part of the future of regional Queensland, the work that IAQ and their members do is really part and parcel of that. We know that there's trends that are happening across the state, and we want to make sure that we're kind of at the beginning of that. We don't want to feel that things are happening to us or at us, as it sometimes is the case, but again, where can we be part of some of the conversations and be looking at, you know, what's going on. So there's lots of conversations we're going to start today. I want to make sure that you can connect in with the speakers who are having a conversation with us. So we'll be sharing their contact details with you. And I've also said to them, if there's websites, if there's ways that they want to be connected with you all, that they need to be able to share that with you as we go through today. So I'm going to really quickly just get the speakers to give a quick wave as I let people know who around our Brady Bunch Zoom room is speaking with us today. And then we're going to kick off with a conversation with Richard. So let me start with Chris. Chris, I'll start with you as our IAQ Regional Prosperity Task Force lead. So Chris is somewhere on the screen and will give us a wave. Hello, Chris.
Yep. Hi, everyone.
We've got Kylie Porter, who many of us will know as the CEO of Greater Whitsunday Alliance. We've got Rob Williamson, the Chief Operating Officer for Alpha HPA. Hello, Rob. We've got Pete Dowling, who again, some of us will know as the CEO of Central Highlands Development Corporation. Hello, Pete. And last but by no means least, we've got Richard Jeffrey, our Executive General Manager, Commercial Strategy and Energy Futures with Stanwell Corporation Limited. So, Richard, I left you last because I know we want to be able to have some of those conversations with you shortly around some of the work that you're doing. But, Chris, can I bounce back to you in terms of this role that IAQ plays. You've got a whole lot of people on this call today, government agencies, ecosystem leaders, businesses, the whole kit and caboodle. Can you talk to me a little bit about what your role is from a regional perspective and how you tap into and work with all of these postcodes that are getting that are filling our chat at the moment?
Yeah, no, thanks, Julia, and also thanks for the Chief Entrepreneur's Office to arrange this or be part of this webinar series. So it's really great. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Look, maybe just a quick snapshot in terms of about IAQ for everyone who hasn't dealt with IAQ. So we're the peak body for that represents the infrastructure sector in Queensland, independent, non-partisan, but really focused on influencing better outcomes around infrastructure planning and development across the whole of Queensland. Established in 1994 and a diverse range of members, and we're looking to continue to build our membership base. So this is sort of part of this sort of discussion as well. So members across Queensland, as north as Cairns, for example, and really across a whole range of industry sectors that sort of interplay with infrastructure, whether that's engineering or construction, infrastructure planning, development, and also the investment community as well. So that's sort of a bit of an overview. Why regional Queensland for us? Well, look, you just need to look at the numbers in terms of regional Queensland. I think, last time I checked, 53% of GDP, 75% of export for Queensland, but also very much home to existing, and as part of this discussion, a range of future industries which are really exciting, whether that's across clean energy, critical minerals, agriculture, and so forth, emerging sort of healthcare development. So that's sort of, I think, really important as part of this discussion, and sort of why IAQ's really focused on sort of regional Queensland. Look, what our focus is very much to engage with key stakeholders in regional Queensland, so we can understand not only those infrastructure challenges but opportunities, but also work closely across the public and private sector in terms of achieving and driving some of those key outcomes, whether it's supporting economic growth, but more additionally, sort of supporting that regional prosperity as well. So really looking forward to the discussion, and it's great to meet all the people who are on the webinar.
Chris, can I ask you, before we kick into the other speakers, what do you see, if we're talking about infrastructure issues, and, connectivity always comes up pretty early, but where do you see some of the macro, let's call them, infrastructure issues across the region? What are some of the areas that you guys as IAQ are looking at?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about sort of the role of infrastructure in enabling industries, and also, I suppose, the flow-on consequences of industries on infrastructure needs, particularly around community needs, around healthcare, education, and so forth. So that total package. We're kicking off some great discussions, for example, with the Department of State Development as they're going through their regional infrastructure plan as well. We can contribute to that discussion and dialogue, because there's some great opportunities there. If you look at, and I know Richard and Rob talk about particularly around sort of value-add processing and renewable energy, but it's sort of how you can bring in the enabling infrastructure to help support that. You understand the consequences, particularly around workforce and amenity as well, to make sure that's supportive of that development, and you maintain that sort of ongoing development as well, not just sort of the big projects that happen then sort of during construction and then fall away, but that ongoing sustainable development as well. So they're part of the things we're having great discussions on and looking to work with stakeholders around.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. Some of us have lived in regions where there's been massive infrastructure activity, or there's been a whole new industry, whether it's coal seam gas or whatever it might be, coming in, and how we can learn lessons from that to move it forward. Particularly, we were talking before we started around the energy plan and how we can do things differently. When we talk about, this whole transition around energy, what are a couple of things that just even at the outset, you want people to think about as we go through today's webinar? What should people be thinking about when it comes to some of this energy, this new industry of energy, basically?
I'll provide some, but I know I'll be really keen for Richard to
Correct.
give some thoughts on it. But look, I think it's my take on it. It's an amazing opportunity, for a number of years. So this is not just a one-off thing. This is a significant sort of mega trend. I think regional Queensland is very well placed from its renewable energy resources. The thing that I've seen that's very exciting is that you've also got those interesting elements of critical minerals and the potential for value add processing and manufacturing in regional Queensland as well, which creates sort of those sustainable industries. And I think that's probably Rob from Alpha HPA can talk about that as well. So that's really interesting. But then you've got to do that work within the communities to say, well, what does that mean, in terms of our workforce, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare? What are those additional sort of supporting infrastructure you need to think about as well, and make sure you plan it as part of that development?
Absolutely. Anything else from you before we kick into the others? I know we'll come back for questions at the end, but for the group that you've got here in front of you, anything else you would like to say to them before we go to our next speaker?
No, the only other thing is that if you want to know more about IAQ, we've got it sort of on our website, a contact us link. So we are very keen to hear from, sort of a range of stakeholders across Queensland as well. The more we know, the more we can do, and more we can work with you in relation to some of those challenges and opportunities.
And Chris, I'll dob you in if you don't mind, but we were just talking again before it was recorded around IAQ looking at doing some more regional events and activities and conversations. So again, you've probably got 70 odd people on this call who would love to be able to connect you in with some of the activities or conversations that they're having across their region. So for people who want to, have some of this specifically for you in your region, reach out to Chris and Sue at IAQ around where they might be able to play a role or connect you in with some of their members. But yeah, certainly in the short time I've crossed paths with you all, it's been really good to see the conversations that are happening.
Great, thank you.
Kylie, can I bounce to you also, because we need to get you on a flight? I know the joys of living regionally and trying to get to everything. A lot of us will know Kylie from the role that she plays with Greater Whitsundays Alliance, but I'm also conscious, Kylie, I assume that everybody knows everybody, which might not be the case. So can I get you to just introduce yourself and some of the work that Greater Whitsundays does, and then, some of what you're seeing in your region around activity that's exciting you?
Thanks, Julia. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kylie Porter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Greater Whitsunday Alliance, based in Mackay. At the moment, I'm actually coming to you from Brisbane because I was lucky enough to be a friend of Sugar last night at a Queensland Parliament event. So just squeezing this in before I jump on the plane to head back to Mackay this morning. So the things that I think that are happening in our region are probably things that are surprising, to most people, who don't live there. And, people like Pete Dowling and others who are on the call today will probably actually say exactly the same about their region. I think what happens in regional Queensland is shocking and surprising, particularly to those who live, in Brisbane or in Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra. Those in the capital cities have no clue about, the scale of development opportunity, and the investment that's happening. So in our region in particular, we had an announcement a couple of weeks ago around the world's largest pumped hydro scheme, in our region, which is, coming in at a price tag of around $12 billion. That's phenomenally huge, and the time frame that they're talking about, is not pie in the sky somewhere, way off in the future. They're talking about construction starting in 2028. For a region like ours, that means that we have to get sorted, organised, planned, prepared right now. And they're the types of projects that are happening. In addition, we're still home, to all of Queensland's metallurgical coal mines. I know Pete claims a couple of those as well in Central Highlands, but, met coal actually holds the key to a green energy future as well. We can't actually achieve, the componentry that's required for green energy without metallurgical coal. So, there is still really strong investment, as well as the technology investment that's happening, across the Bowen Basin is also really incredibly important. And, that investment is going to drive a whole lot of growth in other sectors, which, weirdly are not related to coal mining, but actually share some pretty similar characteristics. Things like, aerospace. The next frontier around aerospace is how do they actually use autonomous equipment, and techniques to be able to explore, beyond this planet, and they're looking to mining to help drive that, that exploration. And it's just pretty incredible that how, a local business in Paget, which is a industrial suburb of Mackay, can technically, one day can conceivably think that they'll be connected to NASA. That's the type of stuff that we talk about in our region, and that's the scale of the opportunity. It hurts my head to think about it, to be quite frank.
I love that comment around, we often end up shocking and awing our larger centres because there is this piece of, there is this assumption that what's happening is agriculture and innovation in ag, and yet it's so much more than that. How are you seeing businesses in your area, or how are you at GW3 helping tell the story? I think regionally we're just really crap at telling our stories sometimes. How are you seeing people do that? Where are some good examples of people being able to promote themselves? Or how can we do that? And I'm conscious there's a storytelling thing later today, but where are you seeing some good examples?
Look, I have to be honest, I think that we are, and I'm going to echo exactly what you said, I think not just regional Queensland, I want to make it really clear that this is just not a regional Queensland thing, this is a regional Australia thing. We are crap at telling a story about the benefits and opportunities of living in regional Australia. So I think it was the Deputy Premier of Western Australia who coined a phrase a couple of weeks ago when I heard him speak, that the rest of Australia thinks that Western Australia and Queensland is either a quarry or a farm, and that's it. The reality is that there is everything in between, every single other, sector in between. And they're not just unskilled jobs, they are highly skilled, career pathway, opportunities in our region. And we just need to redefine the way that we talk about it. We're also incredibly humble in regions. We don't actually like to talk about ourselves in a super positive light. We're a bit self-deprecating. That time, in my view, has gone. We've actually got to start giving ourselves a bit of a pat on the back, talking each other up, talking other regions up. The parochialism, and I always joke about Greater Whitsunday being the best place, the best region in Queensland, because that's my job, it's what I'm paid to do. But the reality is all of regional Queensland has a great song to sing, and we just need to sing it louder. So I'd love to say that there's some really great examples of storytelling going on. I think there's great pockets of storytelling going on. We just need to be more consistent about the sophistication of our storytelling. I love Landline's commitment to regional Queensland of telling farming stories, but we need to broaden our conversation beyond ag tech, mining. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You're getting lots of nods and acknowledgements on that.
But we need to take responsibility for that.
Correct.
I can't look at someone else and point the finger and say, you don't do it. It's me. So if I can't lead by example, how can I expect, Prime Minister Albanese in Canberra to understand anything different about our region? So we all have a responsibility to tell a more mature, sophisticated story about living in regions.
Yeah. Yeah, really agree. So let's all think about how we can do that. That piece around we're actually not competing with each other. Because really Gundawindi is the best region in the no. But we can. I'm going to start a war on here. But we can certainly think about how we start to share. Because really we're competing with the rest of the world in some circumstances. It's really not Gundawindi against Greater Whitsundays. Rob, I want to bring you in here. You know, we're talking about the sophistication. We're talking about the fact that we're more than quarries and farms, which is a very good, good way to think about how we're probably perceived. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role that you have, but also the work that you're doing in this space around the EV batteries and what's sort of coming at us for that? We hear a lot about it, and we all talk about, you know, how far we travel and what that looks like. Can you shed a bit of light for us on the work that you're doing?
Yeah, no worries, Julie. Yeah, so I'm COO for Alpha HPA. We're based in Brisbane and Gladstone. Our operation is here in Gladstone that we're literally just commissioning, which is why I'm up here partly. We produce we have a technology that's world first technology developed in Queensland that produces high purity aluminium materials or chemicals, if you will, that are used in lithium-ion battery chemistries and so lithium-ion battery technology. It's also used in LED technology and semiconductors and so on. So these are sort of critical minerals and materials that go into those high-tech decarbonising type technologies that are out there. So yeah, we're very excited and proud to be commercialising this for the first time right here in Gladstone, and it is very much a sort of a new economy type of industry for Gladstone. You know, it's not a big alumina plant or an aluminium smelter or a LNG line and so there's no coal involved. And in our sort of part of our kind of ethos is really around, well, we 100% believe in and back the idea of helping the planet to decarbonise, and so we use 100% renewable energy in our operation, and so we endeavour to minimise our carbon footprint in what we do to deliver into those industries, which is a big part of it. So yeah.
Can I ask you, you know, is there something, you know, how could this group help with what you're doing? Or, you know, what's an ask that you might have of this regional network that you've got on call?
I don't know if there's so much of an ask, but more of a, perhaps just some observations from my point of view that, and then I'll be, interested to see what other people feel about it. For example, we a lot of people talk about labour shortages in Gladstone, for example, and perhaps in Queensland in these sort of regions. We had quite the opposite problem. We had over 350 applicants for 17 jobs. And the interesting thing and the takeaway from that, from the discussions we had was the fact that the people that applied really wanted to be part of something that actually was actively trying to do something to improve the environment or those kinds of things. Now, we're obviously not an environmental company, but maybe somebody needs to go on mute.
Yeah, can I just ask everybody, sorry, if people can mute themselves just so we don't pick up background noise, that would be awesome. Yeah. Sorry, Rob.
That's okay. I just thought, everybody can hear that way. Yeah. So we're not an environmental company, but people do, the employees that have coming to work for us have done so because they actually want to feel good about a company that believes in supporting and minimising the impact on the environment in what they do. And so that was sort of the overwhelming feedback we got from people. We also, the transition side of it, in terms of people talk a lot about job transitions and so on. And so we're probably a bit of a test case in some regards for that, because we're it's sort of a chemical refining operation, but it's very sort of high end in terms of how we go about it. And we deliberately chose to hire people from that do not have a heavy industry background. So we've got a butcher that works for us. We've got a real estate office coordinator that she came in. So she's come and worked for us. Never set foot inside an industrial facility in her life, and neither is our butcher. She's the same, and so there's about 4 or 5 people out of a team of 34 here in Gladstone that are literally complete rank amateurs, and the feedback from them, which is quite interesting, is that they never get a look in to try and get a job with, say, some of the big majors, because they go, well, where's your experience? And we took a view, and this is, I think, something that industry more broadly needs to think about is, well, there's actually a lot you can learn from people that are coming in from the outside. They've got fresh eyes, and they're if they've got the right attitude, which you cannot buy, then that is worth everything to us. And we've really benefit from that. And it's just fantastic to see those people from all demographics in terms of age and background to be coming here and working in that environment. So that's been really good. And I suppose the question really is for the group is how do we expand on that? That's a challenge, I guess, we need to put out there. How can industry more broadly think about that? And the other thing that we see a lot of is, and in the customers, all of our customers, because are overseas, they're all Europe or North America or Southeast Asia or what have you. But the common theme is because obviously LED technology is significantly high, super efficient in terms of energy consumption. So it helps to reduce our carbon emissions by reducing how much energy we use. But they want to have the ingredients that go into manufacturing those things to also be low carbon, right? And the same thing goes for lithium-ion batteries. I mean, some of the sort of naysayers talk about, with that nice for you to drive around in your fancy EV when, but all these mining things that had to happen. Well, yes, they did, but the life cycle of that thing is still a vast improvement, right, in terms of the environment, the emissions, the net emissions. But our contribution to that is minimising the impact of even those raw materials that go into producing those EVs, etc., for people. And those customers demand to know, well, what is your carbon emissions associated with a tonne of your product? And I think what we'll start to see happen, and this is probably an opportunity for the regions, is around how can small to medium businesses even engage with and understand their carbon emissions with what they do. And in some cases, it might be quite simple because it might just be a consultancy with an office, but nonetheless, understanding that and talking about that with procurement people at the bigger end of town that are looking for those services is something that is going to become more and more prevalent. There's going to be, businesses are going to want to ask, will be asking, well, what is your carbon emissions associated with what you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is one of those things that, and again, that gets us on the front foot rather than somebody telling us we have to do this. How do we start to use that again as part of our storytelling, as part of our marketing? Who chooses to work with and for us because of us being on the front foot with that? There's conversations. I'm gonna move us through to Richard in a minute, but I know there's conversations with some of the banks where they're starting to expect that their clients have ESG policies because the investors investing in the bank expect that will flow on, and particularly in the farming area. So how do we make sure that our producers in regions, understand what these policies are and what that means, because that is coming. And so again, how do we make sure that this isn't happening at us or to us, but rather we're part of the story? And Rob, I love that piece around, you can't train for attitude. You're finding the people who are the right people and then training them with the skills that they need. It's awesome. We can certainly talk more about that when we're having our broader conversation. I want to move us on to Richard. Richard, can I get you to talk a little around, again, what Stanwell's doing, but sharing some of the work that you're part of and what that means for the regions?
Certainly can. And I think just to go back to your point about things happening to us rather than taking control, and I think the Queensland Energy and Jobs Plan that was released towards the end of September puts an excellent frame around that whole decarbonisation model. And I think, with its focus on renewables, but those big storages which Kylie talked about, Burdick and Pioneer, and also Barumba, they're going to make a massive difference and allow, you know, those coal emissions to be reduced over time. And also the transmission, that's going to be critical. But those other key elements to that plan were around the jobs and local manufacturing, and I know a lot of work is going on to try and promote those parts of the plan as well, to make sure that the regions get some benefit from that. So I think within that frame, that frame is something that Stanwell greatly appreciates. We're a government-owned generator, predominantly a coal portfolio at this stage, but clearly we'll be moving our portfolio over time in line with that energy and jobs plan. That's going to require us to pick up a lot of renewable energy and also a lot of storage. So for context, that's about 10 gigawatts of renewable energy to completely replace our portfolio, and probably 3 gigawatts of short, medium and long-term storage. So, you know, the dollars associated with that are huge, but we're certainly up for the challenge. And I think to make our lives just harder, just because, you know, why not? We've also got the Central Queensland Hydrogen Project on our books, which is another 3,000 megawatts of electrolysis, so another 10 gigawatts of renewables. So we're really pushing the boat out there to try and make all of this happen. So I suppose they're really the key activities that we're working on. And I might hone in on that hydrogen, because I think that's probably something that everyone's interested in. I mean, the energy transition is fascinating in its own right, but the concept of a hydrogen economy and the massive role Central Queensland could play, and in fact other regions of Queensland and Australia could play in supplying that hydrogen to the world is really exciting to us. So the renewable energy is a massive challenge in there. Then there's the water supply, huge requirements of water, although there will be some being made available as coal plants exit over time. There's the electrolysis supply. So at the moment, electrolyzers are a bit of a cottage industry. There's not really a standardization of production. So over time, improving the efficiencies of those supply chains is going to be crucial. That water, we're probably going to see the requirement for desalination plants at some point. And then that throws up other thorny issues around brining and disposal of brines and things like that. So lots of key issues that are going to need to be solved, and that are going to need to require some really smart thinking from, you know, across the country, across the state to make them happen. But we think when it all boils down to it, Queensland has fabulous renewable energy resource. It has fabulous government-owned ports, and all those other good things, state development areas, and all those good things, which means that Queensland's the place where, if this is going to happen, it should happen here.
How do you guys, at one of the IAQ events in Brisbane the other week, actually, there was a whole lot of talk about local content and how to work in and on that. How does that work, particularly when you're moving into new areas where we maybe don't know what we need? How do you guys work on that?
Yeah, so look, we've sort of established a bit of a regional development working group, and this sort of runs on a few principles, and they're really around contributing to regional development, supporting Queensland government enviro targets, driving local content in our projects, partnering with First Nations peoples, and providing robust systems and transparency in the way we do things. So I think that's kind of some of the work that we've been doing to try and live that local content concept. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. But we'll also work closely with the Queensland government and the state development teams around that local manufacturing. You know, when you think about this, the huge numbers of renewable energy and storage components we're going to need, then there has to be some way of integrating local supply chains and developing local supply chains into those. So we'll be working hard to make that happen.
Yeah, great. Awesome. There's a few questions starting to pop up in the chat, which is really good. And we want to give a chance for us all to be able to ask questions of the speakers that we've had this morning. Let me bounce to you, Pete, please. So we know we have organisations based regionally. Kylie's talked about the work that she does. Peter, with the Central Highlands Development Corporation. Can you talk a little around how you're helping connect, businesses to some of these major projects? What are you seeing in your region? How's Central Highlands trying to get itself out there?
Yeah, great question, Julia. First thing I'd say to those online is accessing regions, do it whichever way you can. find whichever way you can get into a region through friends, family, networks, whatever it may be. However, in saying that, groups like CHDC, GW3 with Kylie and other colleagues in this space, we are a really good central conduit in and out of a region. That's the role we play. So incredibly important because we can connect you. That's our role. We connect, we communicate, we network, we're that conduit. So really, if anyone is interested in regional activity, we're an inland rural region. We're underpinned by the resource sector, by agriculture, and we have a strong tourism sector as well. If those industries are of interest to you, please don't see them as big holes in the ground and making produce of some description, some commodity. It is far more than that, I can tell you. We are certainly on the journey with the renewable energy and the world ahead of us. I was with a proponent just this week around a Blackwater solar project. We've already got a number of solar projects and a wind farm coming to the region. And most regions do have that. So we are very pragmatic. What I would say is that just be careful of the silver bullet approach. We often talk about that in economic development. You know, that massive, let's get that massive big Intel chip company to manufacture in our region because that's going to solve all the issues, and it doesn't. So we're very pragmatic. We look at our existing industries and look at how we can work with them and add value with them because they are highly technological industries now and today. I would say on the agenda of transformation, we are transforming today. We've been doing it yesterday and we're doing it tomorrow. So it's not as though there's a set date, you know. I know there's a lot of plans and there's a lot of targets and we're well aware of those, but we are transforming every day and that's happening through our businesses. So, you know, people would know or don't know that our, you know, groups like Swarm Farm Robotics in our region are a global leader in field robotics for the ag sector. And there are others that we can all tell that story about, and we certainly do need to do more of that. But they are more than happy to, you know, engage with anyone in region and out of region, and they're global. They go all over the world and tell their story. So the other thing I would say is language is really important. So we all need to learn the art of language in different circumstances and environments. The language of innovation is a certain language. The language of regions and different regions is a certain language. So that's where Development Corps can assist in that translation of, you know, what we're talking about in our backyard, you might think of it in a different context, and we can certainly help out there. The other point I would make is that we are huge on collaboration, and Kylie's on the line, and I think I saw Ben on there as well, Ben Hughes, and there may be other partners there that I've missed, but we do work together in a lot of different ways. So I can give some examples. That one particularly is the Queensland Local Content Leaders Network. Regions, self-defined, no association, just a network that's actually stood the test of time. It's about 8 years old now. And it's about getting together to define what local content is, put that out to the projects and say, hey, this is how we as a region define local content, and go to government bodies and do the same. So we can share that info with you. Beef is a huge product in our region. We got 7 local governments together with the Queensland beef corridors and secured over, I think it was about $800 million in terms of funding for roads. And you think, geez, that's not sexy, but you know, roads connects the supply, but then actually, funny enough, roads are also the connector of people. So really important projects that we get together on. I'd say another one, just looking at the future and the post-mining economy, Kylie's team and our team and Isaac Regional Council are the Bowen Basin Regional Hub for a cooperative research centre called the Transformation in Mining Economies. So we certainly don't sit back and look at what do we have now. We are certainly looking forward as to how do we look at transformation, you know, in our regions, and we're sort of heavily resource orientated. So that's an important thing to us. The last thing I'd say is just be careful around your concepts of coal, metallurgical and thermal. It's a really nuanced argument. And I'd suggest people be really careful about, we just don't want coal altogether and wipe it off the, the planet. It's a nuanced argument.
Thanks, Pete. There's a couple of really good points that you spoke about there, and I think this translation and language is something that certainly hit a note in the chat as well. And that is I think the case, and I think these translation roles that yourself and Kylie play. Whenever I'm talking with people, I think there's sort of three key people that are really important to know. Who's your local council economic development officer or manager? That role's really key for a lot of us. State development, and I know there's a few people on the call who play that state development kind of role. And the other area that I think can be really useful for us is around Oz industry. So we've got some players that sometimes if we're not connected into those people, there's activity already happening that maybe we don't know about. Pete, you mentioned your local content group. Cal Devney just had something in the chat, so that would be really great to tap into if you're happy to share some of that. That would be really great. I want to open up the conversation. So I first want to go back to the speakers first of all. Is any of the speakers got a comment or something that they want to raise to the group since you've heard from some of the other speakers? Anything anybody wants to add? Kylie?
I just wanted to actually reinforce what Pete said. Regions are really, yes, organisations like CHDC and GW3 are key, but the other great thing about regions is that often you can actually request and get a sit down with the mayor, because they're regions. So it's quite different to going to see the Lord Mayor of Perth or trying to get an appointment with Adrian Schrinner, from Brisbane, City Council, who are massive organisations. But I certainly know that our Mayor, Greg Williamson, would happily sit down and speak to any potential proponent and provide the lay of the land, then connect them with a million other, people that they need to make sure that they talk to, so the best thing about dealing with regions is that we know everybody in our region. And the second best thing about dealing with regions is that we will happily introduce you to everyone that we know in our region. So you've just got to start. Don't make assumptions. Don't rely on a Google desktop research. Make sure you actually come directly into region to the people that know.
Great points. Great points. Anything, any other speakers have a key question or a comment that they want to make? I want to throw to the rest of the room as well. Heather will be panicking because I've gone off script slightly, but if anybody's got a question, I'm really happy for you to share it. I'm going to keep it to questions, otherwise we'll lose some time. Anybody got anything?
Julia, it's Patrice here.
Hello, Patrice.
Yeah, good to see you.
You too.
Yeah. It's a great roll up this morning. Well done, pulling all this together. I'd just like to, I guess it's a question to the speakers, but also to the larger group. Often in regional areas, we're very passionate about, sustainable development and all those sort of things. And as Kylie mentioned, we know the players, we can well connected and those sort of things. Just wondering, and I guess this forum is one of these opportunities, but how we collectively have a stronger voice. And if we look at the rollout, say, for example, of the infrastructure for the transition from coal to renewables, environmentally and culturally, it's going to have a significant impact on our environment across our state, and how we can sensibly come together as regions and have a genuine say in where the best placement for this infrastructure might be. And keeping in mind that a lot of these approvals do go through local government in a very fast-track process. So unless we get our act together collectively across the state, we'll end up with a mess. So I'm just interested if anyone's got any ideas on how we do this sensibly and more collectively.
Chris Wade, can I actually throw to you on that from an advocacy piece? Where does Infrastructure Association of Queensland work in that space?
Yeah,
and then to others.
It is a really good point, and I think it's sort of part of this dialogue and getting feedback like that. I think it is pulling together various regions, and I think part of I suppose the thing we're seeing, which is potentially evolving, is more place-based planning around and that's not just a particular town, but a whole region as well. I think that helps to bring together a number of communities in terms of, you know, what are the key developments in, you know, if there is a transition from renewables and there's renewable resources in coal, what does that mean across that whole particular region as well? So look, I think there's opportunities now. I know with the state government going through their regional infrastructure plans, and I think they're conscious that it needs to be more place-based. So I think I know particularly the Far North Queensland regional infrastructure plan is going through initial engagement as well. But I think it is, you know, and IAQ is keen to act as a bit of a connector with the various communities in terms of that dialogue.
Yeah, and that might be one of the outcomes out of this, Patrice, that we can follow that up a little bit, because it would be good to kind of see what that looks like. Do others have any comments on the call around that question or this conversation?
Yeah, I'll throw in. I think just recently, Patrice, LGAQ had their conference, and I know there was resolutions that sort of went through there, or motions, I think they call them, that were looking for some clarity around regional transformation. We know that in Victoria, I was just with a colleague through our CRC work that we do in the La Trobe Valley. They're going through that now, and they have a regional transitional authority. So there is sort of other models out there, and Europe has some examples. So there are some examples, but how do they capture all of us from the economic through to the community side of a region? It's probably the challenge. As you say, I really love the word cultural, because it's not just an industry transformation, it's about people at the end of the day, and that cultural side is so important.
Yeah, and I might just add to that as well. You know, so far in Queensland, the number of working wind farms is very low, and clearly wind farms take up a lot of space and involve a lot of complexity and a lot of negotiations with landholders, and they've been done on a piecemeal basis because there are so few. But that development pipeline is going to need to be huge to support that transition, and so getting a proper conversation going about that, I think, is going to be really critical to the success, and to make sure everyone is involved in the conversation.
There's a question in the chat I want to throw to the speakers if I can, and I just hope that I've got the context right. But the question was, are there any areas of skills shortage? Can I get you maybe just for each of you, either from an industry space or a regional space, talk about any of the areas of skills shortage that you've got?
Every single skill in every single industry sector, in every single business. You know, so regionally we've got, you know, less than 2.3% unemployment. So we're not just at full employment, we're beyond it. If you've got a pulse and a heartbeat, you've got a job in our region. We've done a really significant amount of work on what is going to be our big skills pressure points over the next decade, and believe it or not, it's going to be any digital focused role. So ICT skills, we will need around 3,000 of them over next in our region. So that's going to be a really, really, really big pain point, because I'm not talking about a software engineer who's writing code, just talking about good skill sets who have a digital overlay. That's where a real pain point is going to come in the future.
Yeah, I'd echo that. It's across the board, and I suppose for us, it's about how do you start building those future skill sets now, and working with the schools and the unis, and to just start to get some of that going. And so Stanwell recently was a sponsor of the Hydrogen Grand Prix, which is a schools-based event where they're sort of building vehicles using hydrogen and electrolyzers and the like. So that's a neat way of getting some interest in very early on. But right now, with unemployment at the low levels, we can micro-credential workers from old industries into new industries, and that's something we'll be heavily focused on as a government-owned corp. And hydrogen is not too difficult in terms of the adaptation skills. It's more the sheer numbers of people we're going to need that I think are going to be the problem.
There's lots going on in the chat, so I just want to flag as Asrar is there, and she and I actually met at something X. Carl's got some really good comments there. Hopefully we can come back to. Katie, I can see you've got your hand up. Given we're talking about universities and training, let's throw to you.
I thought it was timely. Good morning,
Yeah.
everyone. I'm from the University of Southern Queensland, and my colleagues Rachel and Felicity are also online. And this session has just been music to our ears. So we're part of a new team, and I'm just
You've managed to mute yourself, Katie.
sorry, I think I hit my space bar instead of enter. We're part of a new team that is leading the National Priorities Industry Linkage Fund, which is a sub-branch of Job Ready Graduates, if you're not aware, the Job Ready Graduates package. And the funding is literally to support my team to work with industries like yourself, to not only work with you to provide work integrated learning opportunities to students, but to help create that pipeline of graduates that you're all saying that you need. And we'd be really, I think my colleagues and I have been furiously typing today to reach out to some of you about how we can work together, because we want to make sure that our students have exposure to really great work integrated learning opportunities while they're students that can then help them to see the great opportunities in regional Queensland. I grew up in a little town called Jandowae, and 20 years ago I had to leave Jandowae to go and do other things, and now I've come back after living in the city for the last 20 years, and I am just so in awe and so impressed of all the amazing things that are happening in regional Queensland. So we really want to keep our students here, working here, and expose them to some of these really exciting and interesting industries that are emerging here. So I really just wanted to plug the funding and the team, and please expect myself or my colleagues to be reaching out to some of you after this morning's session. So.
Yeah, fantastic. And we will make sure that we can share people's contact details as well. Have we got any other questions or comments for the group? There's a couple of announcements we'll throw on the table, but I just want to
Julia, I'll ask a quick question. It's okay. Hello. Hello, everyone. Actually, this question's for Rob. So hats off to Alpha HPA for, all that you're doing around the carbon emissions, and you talked about the skills and utilizing people who weren't necessarily skilled in industry. So I'm curious as to whether there's the storytelling is happening there, because I think that would be valuable to other industry who, are having these skills shortages, but not potentially tapping into the butcher and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I tell it to anybody who wants to listen, which luckily I've got you guys for that at the moment. But we've got to think about how we can maybe get that story out there a little bit more, because I think, touch wood, I think it's going to be a success story. Whenever I come up, which is at the moment a lot, I particularly seek out those employees that have come from that background, and to see how they're going, just to touch base with them, because on the other side of the coin is they don't necessarily have the sort of lizard brain reaction to certain things that you must do when you're working in an industrial environment, such as always, isolating equipment before you do work on it so you don't hurt yourself, those sorts of basics. But everybody has to start somewhere. But I think the key for us, and my view, and this really comes from some experience I had in the United States, where we basically trained a bunch of workers to run a zinc refinery. And it all comes down to putting in the effort to make people feel nurtured and to encourage learning and sort of manage them through that process. And so we put a lot of effort into that, and I believe that actually yields a better outcome, and the efforts that the company should put into training their people and helping them to not just understand what you've got to do, but why you do it is what we put a lot of focus on as well. We have this sort of thing, it's a bit of a silly name, but it's the University of Alpha. One of our team leaders, who happens to be a chemist, loves chemistry, and he's just written this magnificent thing that's for people that have come out of grade 10 or 12 with no real sort of science background to understand the fundamentals of our process and then work through it and learn the roles. So we think that's really helpful, and people it just builds confidence in people, and the employees just love it. So, and they get to see themselves progressing through the curriculum just like you would at a university, and as they learn the tasks hands-on, but also learn a bit of the theory behind it. So yeah, it's great to see.
I'm excited by the amount of conversation that started. There's connections. Family members have just found each other on here by the looks of things. It's all happening in the chat. If people aren't watching that, please go there and have a look. But I'm hoping that this is the start of being able to connect some people in who maybe weren't connected into the businesses and the representative organisations who are on here today. And I'm really excited about, you know, where some of this activity and conversation can go. Can I thank our speakers, if we can please give them a round of applause for joining us today and helping us start these conversations and really bring us together. Storytelling has come up a few times. Heather, I'm going to throw that to you. But one of the things that I wanted to let this little group know that has just happened currently in Parliament is that as people know, Wayne Gerard is the Chief Entrepreneur and he's finishing his time. And I have just been announced as Queensland's next Chief Entrepreneur. So for the next 18 months, we've got a really great opportunity, team, to be able to look at the role that the regions want to play in some of the conversations that are happening statewide. We don't want to make it a regions versus cities thing, so you'll never hear me do that. But I want to make sure that the conversations that are happening to look at the future of Queensland and the role and the economy and everything, that regions are definitely around the table. And when we're talking about the regions, that it's the people that need to be part of those conversations. So this cultural piece is incredibly important. So Patrice raising that earlier is good. We need to make sure that we are there and part of it. So thank you for all of those congratulations. I was really hoping it was going to happen in this hour, team, because I didn't want to hang up and then you all find out 10 minutes later. So I'm really glad that it's happened and we can share it. But yeah, this is a really great opportunity to be able to continue all of the work that you're doing and look at how we can really put a voice to it. So I'm excited for that. Heather, having said that, I'm going to throw to you, please, to just give an announcement of some of the other activities that are happening between now and the end of the year, and we'll let everybody sign off and go about their day.
Absolutely. And just first of all, huge official congratulations. Our team is very excited and looking forward to working with you as the new chief. So one thing that everyone should know that is actually happening today is the Know Your Neighbourhood storytelling event. So this is going to be the first in a series of storytelling events, which is hopefully going to give you the tools, the inspiration, the techniques and the contacts and everything you need to really amplify and accelerate storytelling in your regions, for your businesses, for your organisations. So it is happening at the precinct in Brisbane if you're able to get there in person. Otherwise, it's also being live streamed. Now, I do realise this is a last minute thing that you might only be finding out today. So rest assured, it will actually be recorded and available on the Advance Queensland website after the event as well. But if you can join in person, I've popped the link in the chat earlier, but I will do so again now in case you're interested, you just want to jump on and register. And then the other really exciting thing that we've got happening in December is the final Regional Connect session for the year. And that one is actually going to be with 3 powerhouse chiefs. So we're going to have not only Wayne Gerard, we're going to have our newest chief, Julia Spicer, and we're also going to have the South Australian Chief Entrepreneur, Andrew Nunn, join us on the 7th of December. So that's not up on Eventbrite yet. We're just in the final process of building that. So as soon as it becomes available, I will send you all the link, and I hope you can join us there. So that's the main 2 things. And of course, speakers today, if you have, and everyone on the call today, if you have events in your region that you would like to promote, please pop it in the chat or send me an email, and I'm happy to include that in like the summary email I send out some point today.
We'll save this chat as well. There's been a few questions about all of the links and everything, so we'll save that. Smile for Kylie, cheese. We'll save that so that people can have those links. and really look forward to you all sharing and connecting with each other outside of this. Thanks everyone again for all of the well wishes, but really look forward to seeing what this means for us all, right? If we can't get the regions on the map in the next 18 months, I haven't done my job very well. So there'll be more that comes out about that, but we'll look forward to seeing you on the 7th, and please make sure that you use the office as a way to amplify and get your stories or other people's stories out from your regions. See you all in a month or so, if not before.